Try a small car with personality and it isn't generally a very practical choice, unless perhaps the car in question is a Kia Soul. In-your-face SUV-style looks aren't what we expect from this Korean brand, but sensible pricing and versatile cabin space are much more familiar. Combine the two and you have a car that's worth looking at twice, especially in the improved form we're looking at here, with revised engines, a smarter look, a higher specification and up-rated cabin design. Kia have established themselves a reputation as producers of competent, affordable but sometimes rather characterless cars. Drive some of them and you might wonder whether this Korean maker really has what it takes to make models that are more than just merely a way of getting from A to B. Cars, if you like, with soul. Well, it has, and this is it. Launched back in 2009, the Kia Soul is a small car, but not as we tend to know it. The idea here is to target the style and fashion conscious, much as do other small car products like the Fiat 500 or the Mini. But unlike them, this Kia has managed to do so while still allowing for reasonable levels of practicality. This was the first really trendy little car that you could also realistically use as family transport. Now, inevitably, there's a degree of Marmite, love it or hate it to the styling, but at least this model has always been different, and it's changed the way a lot of people think about Kia. The Soul isn't a 4x4, but it offers much that kind of feel to the Super Mini set in a package that'll be far less of an affront to self-righteous urbanites than any SUV could ever be. The only problem has been a gradual realisation for Kia that all fashionable design has a finite shelf life, particularly in the lifestyle section of a small car market, always looking for the next and trendiest thing. Hence the importance of prolonging this model's appeal for the Korean brand with a far-reaching package of changes introduced late in 2011. Will it all be enough for this car to stay on the agenda for fashionable little families? Let's find out. There are 4x4 overtones in the Soul's upright stance, commanding driving position and higher than average ride height. Even so, Kia hasn't bothered to build in any 4x4 mechanicals or capability, despite suggestions to the contrary from the fake skid plates front and rear and the artificial Range Rover sports style bonnet vents that you'll find in the front wings. Instead, the engine recipe is as sensible as the outside look is charismatic. There's a choice of two 1.6 litre power plants, either a petrol or a diesel, and though neither is particularly quiet, both seem to perform comparably, making rest to 60 in around 10 seconds on the way to a top speed of 112 miles an hour. Now, in the original version of this car, the CRDI diesel was much the better choice, but the gap to the green pump has narrowed considerably with this improved model, thanks to the introduction of the 1.6 litre GDI petrol unit that I'm driving here. It's got 138 brake horsepower, that's 14 brake horsepower brawnier than its predecessor. And it's an all-aluminium unit that will transform the appeal of this model for petrol people already tempted by a Soul. It's got a lot more low-down power and much better throttle response, which will transform the way that you're able to drive this car around town, and also makes it easier and quicker to get up to speed on the motorway. It's also useful when you're approaching a set of twisty bends too, because the broader torque spread really helps you through the corners. On balance though, if I decided to buy this car, I think I'd still find it hard to resist the appeal of the 126 brake horsepower CRDI diesel. It's been revised in this enhanced model for better performance and economy, and like the GDI, it features a all-new 6-speed gearbox that's much slicker and more direct than the previous rather vague 5-speeder. Now, the GDI petrol model, that's the one I've got here, really needs this 6-speed box. It's an engine that has to be revved to nearly 5,000 RPM before you get everything it has to offer, and the extra ratio in the manual gear change helps to make this trait easier to live with. If you can't be bothered with swapping cogs, then you're going to need a Soul CRDI, because that's the only Soul engine that has an automatic transmission option, not the old 4-speeder that was initially offered with this car, but a far more modern 6-speed auto unit that's now something that's more than just a choice for geriatrics. Whatever your choice under the bonnet, the Soul continues to be an easy partner in city centre motoring. Light steering and a tight turning circle are welcome here, as is the generally good all-round visibility, though the thick rear C-pillars may sometimes be a problem when reversing. Mind you, that flat back rear end makes it a lot easier when you're trying to edge back into a tight space. So, though you get a bit more body roll than you would in a conventional Super Mini, it's not that noticeable unless you're really pushing on over secondary roads. And if that's the case, then you probably won't appreciate the rather overly light assisted steering. But the ride's okay, unless you've made the mistake of going for really large optional alloy wheels. Overall, if not an especially agile small car, one that always feels planted and assured. The thinking behind this car isn't too hard to fathom. Take the standard Super Mini platform that Kia uses in its small Rio and Venga models, the same one that Hyundai has for its little i20. Then get the guy who styled the original Audi TT, Peter Schreier, to create a funky body to sit on it. In this case, a tall, almost military-style square-cut stance with a high bonnet, a vertical rear hatch and bulging wheel arches. Then simmer the whole thing in Kia's US design studio to give it a bit of surf shack attitude. Understand the backstory and you'll not wonder at a result that still leaves other school-run parents doing a double take. Just how far you'll want to pique their interest will probably depend on just how far you ventured up the range or into the options list. Entry-level versions look relatively conventional, but go for one of the colour-coded interior options or jazz up the bodywork a little and you'll be ready for a street cruise. All the classic 4x4 styling cues are here in evidence, from the chunky bumpers and the flared wheel arches to the optional roof bars and the set square rear end. There's even a set of side vents just behind the front wings here that look as if they could have been lifted directly from a Land Rover. Self-consciously funky? Well, perhaps, but it certainly makes a statement. And a more contemporary one in the case of the improved model that we're looking at here, which features minor changes to the front grille, the lights, the front bodywork and the wheels, as well as trendy LED daytime running lights on plusher variants like this one. There's also a restyled front bumper to give the car a wider stance. While smarter LED rear lamps now use the same trendy light pattern as that on the 2006 Detroit Auto Show Soul prototype that inspired this design in the first place. Enough on the attitude. What about the practicality? Well, this car might only be 4 meters or so long. It's only a fraction longer than a Fiesta, but its boxy shape bodes well here. Kia reckons that this car has even more space than, say, a Nissan Qashqai, which is 200mm longer and competes with far larger cars. But don't get too carried away. 3 adults would struggle for long periods on the back seat here. But standards of comfort for 2 are actually pretty good, with very good head, leg and shoulder room for what is essentially a stylish Super Mini on stilts. Older buyers will appreciate the high seats and the wide opening doors, though what they'll make of the bad boy styling is anybody's guess. At the wheel, which adjusts for reach as well as for rake, all the controls fall easily to hand and are simple to use, and the materials quality around the dash seems much better than before. It's still a bit fiddly to adjust the angle of the rear backrest, and I'm not sure I'd want the tartan trim fitted to this particular model. But apart from that, it's a very pleasant cabin. Out back, there's plenty of luggage space, 340 litres with the rear seats in place. They do split fold forward rather half-heartedly. The seat back flopping onto the seat base, but at least that frees up 818 litres of total fresh air, and you get this useful underfloor compartment to keep valuables away from prying eyes. List prices suggest that you'll typically be paying somewhere between £13,000 and £18,000 for this car, but you'll need to put that into perspective. Unusually for a Super Mini, the engines are quite large, with nothing less than 1.6 litres in capacity. So you'll need to take that into account when comparing this Soul to apparently cheaper rivals. Not that there are many. So what are we talking about in real terms when it comes to competitors for this car? Well, let's say that you were considering it as an alternative to a conventional 5-door Super Mini. The 1.6 GDI petrol Soul that I'm testing here costs about the same as an ordinary petrol 1.4 litre 5-door Ford Fiesta, but offers far more power and style, and a fat saving if you're considering it in comparison to, say, a 1.4 litre petrol Vauxhall Corsa. And if you're considering a CRDI diesel Soul, then the story is even better. Most diesel Super Minis can't match this Kia's performance, and those that can are far pricier. This car's soulmate, Hyundai's i20, might save you £1,000 or so, but again, you'd have to compromise on power. The Hyundai not available with an engine larger than 1.4 litres in size. As for something lifestyle-y, well, it was to combat cars like this that Fiat developed a 5-door version of their 500, but the Italians still struggle to match this Korean's value proposition. Mini certainly can't, with a comparable version of their Clubman offering you just 4 doors and a price tag that's over £3,000 more. So let's assume that you've been through the comparison process and you've decided upon this Kia. What can you expect to find fitted for your money? Well, whichever of the 1.6 litre engines you choose, the 134 brake horsepower GDI petrol that I've got here, or the 126 brake horsepower CRDI diesel, you should find a very decent level of standard equipment running to air conditioning, Bluetooth compatibility with voice control for your mobile phone, a decent quality MP3 compatible CD stereo with AUX and USB points and steering wheel audio controls. There's also electric mirrors, remote central locking, an illuminated sun visor mirror, and hill start assist to stop you drifting backwards on uphill junctions. Of course, customers are required to dip into their pockets or move up the range for the real niceties. Go for a plush top spec model like this and you can expect to find features like 18-inch alloy wheels, cruise control, LED daytime running lights and auto headlamps. And of course, there are numerous trendy options on the extra cost list if you really want to get your passengers talking. Trendy townies may want to consider the 6-speed automatic gearbox that's an option on the diesel model. And when it comes to safety, well, that's well covered with twin front, side and curtain airbags, plus anti-whiplash front head restraints and Isofix child seat fastenings. To make sure that you don't have to use all of that stuff, there's the usual electronic assistance for braking, traction and stability control. And on this improved model, you've got the benefit of Kia's clever VSM vehicle stability management system, which is able to stabilize the car if one side of it has more grip than the other. Let's say that if one side of the car is on the side of the road where there's ice or standing water or wet leaves. This Kia promises to keep running costs under control and does pretty well. The reasonably hefty 1.4 ton curb weight does slightly limit what this 1.6 litre GDI petrol variant can achieve, but it still returns 44.1 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and puts out 149 grams per kilometre of CO2, which is a step forward from before. Not quite such an improvement, but still very useful, is the return managed by the 1.6 litre CRDI diesel. It manages 57.6 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and puts out 129 grams per kilometre of CO2. Bear in mind though that if you opt for this diesel with the 6-speed automatic gearbox, then those returns take quite a hit. The fuel consumption falls to 47.9 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle, and CO2 emissions rise to 155 grams per kilometre. What else? Well, insurance groupings range between 14 and 19 on the 1 to 50 grouping scale, and scheduled maintenance should be affordable. Kia reckons that on its dealer program you should have to shell out no more than £350, maybe a bit less than that, over 3 years. Service intervals are every 10,000 miles for the GDI petrol and every 12,500 miles for the CRDI diesel. Residual values will inevitably be helped by the class-leading 7-year 100,000 mile warranty, which is unlimited in mileage in the first 3 years and is transferable onto second or third owners. Helped by this, industry experts reckon that you should get at least 35% of your original purchase price back after the typical 3-year 36,000 mile term. You may even do a bit better than that if you specify your car correctly, although if you go large on the lifestyle bling, then buyers will tend to shy away. Still the funkiest of Kia's offerings, this improved Soul is now a lot more sophisticated under the skin, but the main concept behind it hasn't changed. The whole idea of bringing the more palatable elements of 4x4 design to a front-wheel drive super mini-sized vehicle makes a lot of sense. Buyers looking for an affordable little runabout that's got a bit of style may easily be seduced. This car bought Kia dealerships a new experience, a model that had potential buyers scanning the colour, trim and accessory options before they looked at the price. A car that's been viewed very differently. It's not for everyone, of course. It isn't supposed to be. Some will see its quasi-military SUV-style looks as being cutting edge and right up their street. Others simply won't get it. Most important, though, is the way that the Soul has established Kia as a far cooler brand. And it's hard to put a price on that. If you're looking for a small but practical car with a big personality, then try one. Who knows? You may well agree that you've got to have soul.